So hello and good morning. In the last class, कहाँ तक पहुंचे थे हम? इंडिया अफ्रीका हमने कर लिया. वेस्ट एशिया बाकी है. यूएस तक हम नहीं पहुंचे अभी. यूएस हो गया. वेरी गुड. सो नाउ टुडे वेस्ट एशिया. ऑल राइट. यस. So when we talk about India and West Asia, again, from the perspective of the examination, what is important is to understand what are the areas of engagement between India and this region. So largely we can say that West Asia is part of India's extended neighborhood. All right, it is part of India's extended neighborhood, which means we are talking about countries starting with Iran, right? After Pakistan, we have Iran, and from Iran till the Mediterranean coast, the region is known as West Asia. Sometimes the term Middle East is also used, but Middle East does not make sense in the context of India, because this is a term which is used by the Americans and the Europeans. Because if we say Middle East, so then the question would be middle of what? East of what? All right, so that's why we generally call this region as West Asia. West of India, western part of Asia. All right. So largely we can have some common features of the region. For example, this region spreads across Indian Ocean, and also some part of this region is in the Mediterranean. Right? So then if you look at the region, it becomes important. West Asia itself becomes important for its location. Right? That countries of West Asia are Indian Ocean countries as well as Mediterranean countries. And UPSC has asked a lot of questions from this region, which are location based question in the preliminary examination. All right. Mediterranean coast में कौन सा है, Red Sea के coast में कौन सा है. For example, there is COP27 which is going on right now. कहाँ हो रहा है? Egypt में कहाँ हो रहा है? Sharm el Sheikh. So can you guess where exactly is Sharm el Sheikh? Sharm el Sheikh is the Red Sea resort in Egypt. All right. It is on the coast of Red Sea when it comes to Egypt. So it's important in terms of being surrounded by South Asia. To the north of West Asia is Central Asia, and beyond the Mediterranean, it is flanked by Europe, as well as across the Red Sea, it is flanked by Africa. If you cross the Red Sea, in Indian Ocean, we had seen what is called Horn of Africa. All right, places like Djibouti, right, Somalia. So these are very close to West Asia. So that's one reason why we can say that West Asia has a geostrategically significant location. Now, if we look at these factors and we talk about why West Asia is further important, so it is important for its resources, right? West Asian countries are producers of oil and gas. Major part of the grouping called OPEC. All right, OPEC has 13 members. 13 देश हैं OPEC में, और उसके सबसे महत्वपूर्ण देश कहाँ पे हैं? In West Asia, specifically in what we call the Gulf region, Gulf Cooperation Council region, right? And then apart from that, why West Asia is important? It's religious, or let's say it's civilizational significance. In what sense? So we can say that West Asia is the cradle for birthplace of three Abrahamic religions. All right, three of the most important religions, monotheistic religions, Abrahamic religions, because Abraham is the common figure among these religions, right? Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. All of these three originated in West Asia, in different parts of West Asia. So that's why again it remains an important place for pilgrimage. For example, Hajj to Saudi Arabia, right? Every year, annually, it's a large visit of people. So that's another thing which makes it important, that in different traditions, civilizations, West Asia or religions from West Asia have played an important role. Now, West Asia is also important because of its internal, or let's say regional issues, right? Or what we can say as the geopolitics of West Asia. Geopolitics of West Asia, meaning what is happening within West Asia. West Asia, which is important from the perspective of its geostrategic location. West Asia, which is important from the perspective of its resources. West Asia, which is also important from the perspective of its religious significance. So what is happening within West Asia? So you have in West Asia factors like traditional rivalry. All right, traditional rivalry. So that has affected geopolitics in West Asia. What traditional rivalry? So you have on one end of West Asia the country of Israel. Large parts of West Asia are Arab states, Arabic speaking states, or culturally Arabic states. So first and most important fault line has been between the Israel and Arab states, meaning they have had difficulties. They have fought multiple wars, right? First Arab-Israel War 1948, then Suez Crisis 1956, then in 1967 June War or Six-Day War, 1973 Yom Kippur War, all right, and subsequently there have been multiple phases of conflict between Israel and its Arab neighbors. So that's a traditional fault line, all right, traditional rivalry. Or rivalry between Iran and Arab states, right? On the other end of West Asia, just as towards the Mediterranean end you have Israel, towards the eastern end of West Asia is Iran. And Iran also has multiple Arab neighbors like Saudi Arabia. So Iran and Saudi Arabia did not have good relations, don't have good relations. Iran and its Arab neighbors don't have good relations. So this is another traditional rivalry, part of geopolitics of West Asia. And then you have rivalries between Arab states. For example, most recently, rivalry between Saudi Arabia and Qatar. All right. Sometimes states which may have common culture may also have differences. For example, in recent past, Saudi Arabia and Qatar had differences, right? Where Saudi Arabia and other countries imposed a blockade on Qatar, 2019-20, that was the period. And then apart from these state rivalries, you also have certain civil wars, meaning what is happening, conflicts happening within a particular country. So what kind of civil wars? You will see currently a civil war playing out in Yemen and Syria. All right, Yemen and Syria. So even in these kinds of situations where two parties within a country are fighting, for example, who is fighting in Yemen? In Yemen, the fighting is between the government forces and what are called the Houthi rebels. Right? So even in this kind of a conflict, you will find that major states are involved on the side of one or the other power. For example, the government forces in Yemen are backed by countries like Saudi Arabia, all right, or UAE itself is a leader of transitional forces in this country, and Houthi rebels are backed by Iran, right? So that's also where the rivalry of countries is playing out if there are regional conflicts. In Syria, you have again government forces on the one side, the government forces, and on the other side there is a wide and varied opposition. All right, this opposition is quite diverse. There are people who are fighting, demanding democracy in Syria, but there are also terrorist elements fighting against the government, including ISIS, Islamic State, right? So again, in this kind of a scenario, government of Syria is backed by Russia and Iran. All right, Russia and Iran have backed the government of Syria, but the opposition forces are backed by different countries. For example, every country has its own supported faction. Turkey is involved here. Then you have Qatar, which is involved here. Saudi Arabia is involved here, and US also, in a limited sense, is involved here. So what we are saying is very simple, that these are the factors, geopolitical factors, which affect the stability of West Asia, or in other words, this is why West Asia is in news, right? When one rivalry or one conflict or the other conflict breaks out. But would there be a question on this? There is no question on this. There is no question going to be there on Syria or Yemen. But whenever this is happening, what happens is this region becomes in news. So that's why location-based questions are asked, right, from this region in the preliminary examination. And then you have the rise of non-state actors. Various non-state actors, terrorist groups have emerged in this region. Non-state actors, terrorist groups emerging in this region. What has that meant? That has meant that this is another factor of instability in this region. So you have the emergence of Al-Qaeda, all right, and you have now the emergence of ISIS or ISIL, Islamic State in Iraq and Levant, or Islamic State in Iraq and Syria. That is the name of this organization, right, with various affiliates in different parts of the world. So why is West Asia in news? In simple terms, what have we learned so far? Because of its location, right? Anything to do with Central Asia or with Indian Ocean would attract attention towards West Asia. Anything to do with global energy prices. For example, recently OPEC had a meeting in which it cut down oil production. Oil prices went up, right? So West Asia would be in news. West Asian countries would be in news. Or conflicts close to home in our extended neighborhood. You will find West Asia would be in news. Apart from this, the geostrategic location and resources of West Asia has meant that there has also been an interest of external actors, right? So you also have another factor which affects the stability and relations across West Asia. These are external actors. So mainly you have actors like USA, which have been dominant in West Asia, right? For example, US maintains a naval fleet in Bahrain, all right? So US military presence is there in this region, or US is an ally of many of the important countries in this region. US is an ally of Israel. US also is an ally of Saudi Arabia, right? So US, with its relations and interests, has also been an important force in shaping the outcomes in this region. Similarly, in the past, for example, when oil was discovered in this region, right? In that scenario also, UK, United Kingdom, Britain was the colonial power, imperial power in this region. So Britain was replaced by USA, but also you have relations like Russia and now China. China, as world's largest or largest growing energy consumer, is important for West Asia because West Asian countries are energy producers, and similarly West Asia is important for China, all right, because China is an energy consumer. So growing Chinese interest may also be seen here. But generally we say that USA, for example, has been instrumental in the geopolitics of this region because this region has been geostrategically important for US, right? So these factors make West Asia important for India also, right? When we look at it from India's perspective, we can understand that why West Asia is important for India. Once we have understood why West Asia is generally important, it would not be very difficult to understand why West Asia is important for India. Why is this relation important? All right. So then you may like to write down, please write down. West Asia is part of India's extended neighborhood. West Asia is part of India's extended neighborhood. Its geostrategically significant location, connecting multiple regions. Its geostrategically important location connecting multiple regions. Its energy resources, its role in global trade and investments, as well as the religious significance in the context of the Abrahamic religions, has been a part of India's outreach, from the 1970s onwards. West Asia, particularly the Gulf states, particularly the Gulf states have been important destinations. Most importantly, the Gulf states have been the important destinations for migration of Indian labor or Indian workers, with the presence of more than 9 million Indian expatriates, stability and security in West Asia, is important for is important for India, is important for India. Traditionally, India's foreign policy approach towards this region, traditionally, India's foreign policy approach towards this region has had to make choices involving the traditional rivals like the Arab states, and Israel. In this context, Arab states and Israel. In this context, India's relations were developed more in the case of the Arab states, and relations with Israel was not prioritized. In more recent times, the difficulty of choice has involved relations between Arab states and Iran. In the context of regional rivalries, and fault lines, India's policy towards West Asia has been based on being neutral, non-prescriptive, non-interference, and advancing cooperation for mutual benefits. In this regard, India's interests in West Asia can be categorized into the following. One, maintaining cordial relations at the level of governments, maintaining cordial relations at the level of governments, promoting, second point, promoting trade with important partners like the GCC countries, promoting trade with important partners like the GCC countries, and also tapping into the large sovereign wealth funds, of these countries for investments, Third, safeguarding India's energy security, by diversifying sources of supply, and areas of cooperation in the energy sector. Fourth, safeguarding the opportunities available for Indian workers in the region, as well as ensuring their welfare, Fifth, promoting cultural and civilizational ties, with the region through people to people engagements, as in the case of the Hajj pilgrimage, In recent times, now points are complete. In recent times, regional and global developments, regional and global developments have presented both challenges, and opportunities for India, have presented both challenges and opportunities for India in this region, The ongoing Russia-Ukraine war, has made the value of energy security, further evident, In this context, West Asian countries as both large producers, West Asian countries as both large producers in the OPEC, as well as geographically closer to India, as well as geographic proximity to India, as well as their geographic proximity to India. Have become further significant, In the past, US sanctions on Iran, posed a challenge for India, in maintaining energy and economic ties with Iran. The ongoing Vienna talks, between Iran and the P5, may open up opportunities for India. Next, the signing of Abraham Accords. In 2020, not only opened up the path not only opened up the path for normalization, the path for normalization of relations between between Israel, not only opened up the path for normalization of relations between Israel and the Arab states, but also opened a window of opportunity, for India to diversify, its engagements, This has led to newer initiatives like the I2U2 meetings, meeting, with a focus on cooperation in areas like agriculture and food processing, innovation and investments, as well as climate and clean energy, while new opportunities require India to formulate policies for cooperation in diverse areas, the traditional difficulties and challenges to regional stability, needs to be contended with, while the coming together of Israel and Arab states, may lead to long term stability, it is yet to be seen whether and how and how it resolves the long-standing Palestinian issue, whether and how it resolves the long-standing Palestinian issue. It is also to be seen whether the Arab-Israel rapprochement rapprochement आपने किसी किताब में पढ़ा होगा, USSR rapprochement RAPPROACHMENT. The Arab-Israel rapprochement is based on the understanding to resolve the differences or is more narrowly focused on an animus, meaning animosity towards Iran, more narrowly focused on an animus towards Iran. If it leads to policies aimed at the isolation of Iran, if it is aimed at the further isolation of Iran, it may pose the challenge of difficult choices. For India. In this context, India needs to design its West Asia policy to safeguard and promote its interests to build cooperation based on mutual benefits, and promote regional stability on the basis of timeless principles. All right. So this is where we have summarized our relations with West Asia. There are few things to be remembered. One, as India's extended neighborhood, for energy security, for economic engagements, for people to people ties. West Asia is important for India, but West Asia is not what India controls. So the factors of instability, meaning if there is a war, if there is a conflict, if there is a rivalry, it undermines India's interests. Right? So India cannot directly control these outcomes. At best, what India can do is India can manage these relations. On what basis? Traditionally, India has been neutral. We don't side with anyone. If two sides are fighting, we don't side with anyone. Right? Non-interference, which means what? We don't prescribe to anyone what kind of, we don't comment on anyone's issues. Kahan kya ho raha hai, in which country what is happening, we don't comment on those issues. Thirdly, non-prescriptive. We don't tell anyone whether you should be a democracy or you should not be a democracy, whether you should be a monarchy or not a monarchy. That is not our burden. Alright, so that is basically how our policy has been. Traditionally, our relations developed in such a way that Arab states were more important for India. It had both ideological basis because from the freedom struggle period, we had close linkages or association with the issues of the Arabs in this region. More importantly, the issue of Palestinian statehood. All right. So that is one reason why our relations with Arab states developed. And second was our interest. Our people started moving in large numbers to the Arab states, and our energy interests are also better served by relations with the Arab states. Now these things changed or started changing after 1992 when India normalized relations with Israel, because the world was changing. Dunia bhar mein change ho raha tha. There were peace talks, conferences going on in which Arab states and Israel themselves were talking, like the Madrid peace process. So since then, our relations diversified, where we also engaged with Israel as a normal partner. So this trend has continued. Again, the world has kept on changing. So 2000 and, for example, 2017, the Prime Minister of India made a visit to Israel. So it was first prime ministerial visit to Israel, and we said that we have de-hyphenated our policy, which means that we don't equate two relations. Each of our relations is based on its own merit, and it is based on its own reasons or interests which are there, right? So we don't equate Arab-Israel relations with each other. We have relations with Arab states. We also have relations with Israel. That is the meaning of de-hyphenation, that these are separate relations standing on their own merit. All right? And no matter what India is doing, at the heart of it is pursuing its interest. How best, under what circumstances can we best pursue our interest in this region, right? So we are involved with this region, but there are issues on which we also maintain a distance, right? Rivalries or traditional questions. So towards the end, we said that, for example, if Abraham Accord is signed, it reduces India's difficulty. Why? Because for India, Israel is also important, Arab states are also important. So if these two important actors have good relations with each other, then it eases India's way of engaging with these actors. Now, we also said that on the one hand, you see Abraham Accords being signed, normalization of relations between Arab states and Israel has led to newer initiatives, I2U2. India, Israel, US, UAE, 4 countries coming together, and they are conducting a dialogue. This is also called West Asian Quad. So we said that this can be beneficial to the extent talks so far have reflected an interest in advancing cooperation in areas like agriculture, food processing, or in areas like innovation, investments, or in areas like climate and, more importantly, clean energy. So we can have benefits. We can derive benefits from this kind of cooperation. If Arab states and Israel become friends, it is good for us, right? Because it removes. हमारा क्या लेना देना भाई? Israel and Arab states, they have their own differences. तो इसका मतलब ये नहीं है कि भाई we side with Israel or we side with the Arab states, right? We have to see what situation benefits us the most. So जब दुनिया भर में सारे लोग दोस्त होंगे, तो that situation benefits us the most. But on the other hand, we said that it has to be seen. ये जो दोस्ती है अरब स्टेट्स और इजराइल के बीच में, is it broadly focused, meaning is it a sincere effort to understand differences and resolve long-standing issues, or is it based on a narrow focus, which is that today both sides view Iran as a common challenge. Arab states also are wary of Iran's missile program or Iran's nuclear program. Israel also is wary of, concerned about Iran's nuclear program, Iran's potential to interfere in the affairs of other countries. तो ये दोस्ती केवल ईरान को रोकने के लिए या ये दोस्ती ब्रॉडर कारण से? So if this friendship is based on broader regions, India would continue to benefit, all right, because it would lead to stability in this region. But if this is narrowly focused on containing Iran, तो फिर वहां पे वही मुश्किल आ जाती है कि then you have to choose between Israel, Arab states on one hand and Iran on the other. India does not want to choose, right? हर देश के साथ रिलेशन में उसके अपने फायदे हैं. So it doesn't make a sense that we say that this is more important and this is less important. Practically we have to do that, but in principle we don't want to do that. So that is what we are saying, that it is possible that this happens. Then we said that Russia-Ukraine crisis, it has posed a challenge. What kind of challenge? So in simple terms, the shortage, global energy shortage. So just as economies were coming out of productivity slump caused by COVID-19, just as productivity was picking up, the Ukraine-Russia crisis has meant that the oil supplies became uncertain just as when oil demand was going up, right? So in that context, why is West Asia important? Because West Asia is a proximate geography. आपके पास है, and it makes sense to secure sources of supply close to you, क्योंकि लाना ले जाना उसका भी अपना एक रिस्क है. So as a close region which is producer of energy, West Asia's significance has further been highlighted. ऐसा नहीं कुछ नया हमको पता चला, but this is something that we understand. Second thing, if energy prices are affected by supply shortage or sentiments associated with Russia-Ukraine war, it is also affected by OPEC, Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, decision to cut oil production. Oil production, जब oil demand ज़्यादा है, oil production कम होगा तो oil prices और ऊपर जाएंगे. So ये भी दिखाता है कि for these reasons also we need to engage with West Asian countries. We need to engage का मतलब क्या होता है? बात करना. All right? तो ये समय ये सोचने के बारे में कि फ्यूचर एनर्जी सिक्योरिटी अरेंजमेंट्स क्या होंगे इंडिया के, और बोथ सिनेरियोज, इन चैलेंज एंड अपॉर्चुनिटी बोथ, वेस्ट एशिया बिकम्स इंपॉर्टेंट. दिस इज समथिंग दैट वी नीड टू फोकस ऑन, राइट? और ये सारी चीजें होती है, रीजनल राइवलरी है, कॉन्फ्लिक्ट है, नॉन स्टेट एक्टर्स इमर्ज करते हैं. इनका सबसे बड़ा खतरा किसको है? सबसे बड़ा खतरा ऑब्वियसली इंडिया का ट्रेड सफर करेगा, इंडिया का जो एनर्जी इंपोर्ट है वो सफर करेगा, बट हमारे लोग हैं वहां पे. All right, around 9 million people of Indian origin are there. So इस रीजन में क्या होता है, इसलिए ये हमारे लिए इंपॉर्टेंट हो जाता है, राइट? कहीं भी जहां पे भी हमारे लोग हों तो ये बहुत ऑब्वियस है, समझ लेना कि भाई ये रीजन इंडिया के लिए इंपॉर्टेंट है, राइट? सो आफ्टर हैविंग डन दैट वी सिंपली लुक एट आवर रिलेशंस. सो फर्स्ट एंड मोस्ट इंपॉर्टेंट सेट ऑफ रिलेशंस जनरली इन टर्म्स ऑफ नंबर्स इज विथ अ ग्रुप ऑफ कंट्रीज कॉल्ड जीसीसी कंट्रीज, राइट? क्या पिलर्स है इंडिया के रिलेशन के इस रीजन में? सो वन इज रिलेशंस विथ जीसीसी कंट्रीज. हियर वी हैव इंपॉर्टेंट कंट्रीज लाइक सऊदी अरेबिया एंड मोर इंपॉर्टेंटली UAE. All right, so these are our partners. Saudi Arabia and UAE both we define as strategic partners. Then on the other hand you have Israel. All right, Israel is also an important partner, and when we talk about Israel we also talk about Palestine, right? For the long time these two were associated, and now we have another set of relations in this region important with Iran. So these are three main orientations of India's relations in this region. तीन तरह के देशों के साथ हमारे संबंध हैं, right? Arab countries, GCC states, mainly Saudi Arabia and UAE, Israel on the Mediterranean coast, and Iran, geographically closest West Asian country to India, right? These three are our relations in this particular region. So that is what we will be doing. We will be looking at our relations one by one with these actors. So first, let's look at our relations with GCC countries, right? So when we say GCC, what is the meaning? Gulf Cooperation Council. Gulf Cooperation Council. All right, Gulf Cooperation Council countries. So the Gulf Cooperation Council was formed in the year 1981 and its headquarters is in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. Now this is what we can say as is a politico-economic and security alliance between 6 Arab Gulf monarchies. All right, which 6 of them? Countries located around the Persian Gulf. All right, countries located around the Persian Gulf. Which countries? Saudi Arabia, UAE, Bahrain, Oman, Qatar, and Kuwait. All right. These are the members of Gulf Cooperation Council. So Iran is not a member of Gulf Cooperation Council. Yemen is not a member of Gulf Cooperation Council. Iraq is not a member of Gulf Cooperation Council. All right. These countries are the 6 Arab monarchies. All right. Political system in these countries is monarchy. Culturally, these countries are mainly Arabic speaking countries. There are 22 countries which are Arabic speaking countries across West Asia and North Africa. So most of the West Asian and North African countries are Arab countries, right? The exception would be in this region Israel. All right, Israel is not an Arab country, of course, and Iran. Iran is not an Arab country in this region. Rest of the other countries, West Asia, North Africa, generally are Arab countries or Arabic speaking countries, right? So these are members of GCC. Now the GCC is important because it has an ambition of economic integration. All right. For example, they want to have economic integration to the extent that they want to serve as a common market. They also want to move towards a common currency. It has not happened as yet, but they more or less act as an economic bloc in this region. That's their ambition. It has not happened. Then they also have an ambition of developing common defense response. So they have the Peninsula Shield or Peninsula Security Shield, an armed force, combined armed force based in Saudi Arabia, right? So this is part of how they want to even integrate in terms of security, right? So that's their ambition. It does not mean that all of them have exactly the same view on security and economic issues, but it simply means that they want to develop their cooperation whereby they would have common position, common response, security wise also. That is their ambition. When it was formed in the year 1981, it was a time of security challenge in this region, right? 1981. This is a period of Iran-Iraq war. Iraq, an Arab state at that point in time mainly, or part or supported by the Arab states, and Iran, and non-Arab states. So they were fighting a war with each other. So in that context, these countries decided to come together. So first instinct was a common security response, and then later on they said that we have certain economic commonalities, so we should also economically integrate. So GCC countries, right? Now, the importance of GCC when it comes to energy security, when we talk about India and West Asia, one of the most important areas that we talk about is energy security. So in that, if we see, when we are talking about West Asia, we are generally talking about Gulf countries, right? In the area of energy security, West Asia simply means relations with Gulf countries, right? Because this is where our energy interests are concentrated. So we can simply say that from the perspective of India's energy security, Gulf Cooperation Council countries are important. And UPSC in 2017 in the mains examination asked a question about India's energy security policy cooperation with West Asia. All right. So the question started with a statement that energy security is important for India's economic growth. That's a given. That's a no-brainer. कि ये तो है ही जरूरी. But if India wants to advance at a faster pace, ज़्यादा फैक्ट्रियाँ खुलेंगी, ज़्यादा लोग कार खरीदेंगे, right? Energy consumptions would go up. Energy consumption would go up. So that's a no-brainer. And in that context, West Asia would also remain to be important. Why? Because for the foreseeable future, India would remain a net energy importer. All right. So that is what the question asked. That energy security is important for India's economic future. In this context, discuss India's energy security cooperation with, or energy policy cooperation with, West Asia. That was the question. Let's try and answer this. So this kind of a question, you can always start by defining what energy security is. What is energy security? What is energy security? Anyone? क्या है energy security? Any definitions, any rudimentary definitions would also do. What is energy security? जोर से बोलो. To ensure energy consumption of entire country. Okay. Anyone else? At any time. So time भी जोड़ दिया चलो. At any time. Good. Anyone else? Very good. Anyone else? Anyone interested in answering the question? No. Chaliye, but we have sufficient for answering the question. So International Energy Agency says that energy security lies in ensuring uninterrupted supply of energy sources at an affordable price. So what is energy security? A situation in which there is uninterrupted access to energy, but also at an affordable price. So that's what IEA says, International Energy Agency. So according to International Energy Agency, energy security involves, अब तो बता दिया मैंने. So would you be able to revise? Energy security involves uninterrupted supplies at affordable prices. So that is broadly what we can call energy security if these two things are met. Now these two things are very difficult to meet. First of all, there has to be energy resources. They should be accessible, right? Second of all, there should be a common expectation in terms of price realization. So by nature, it would involve relation between the producer and the buyer, the producer and the consumer. There would be two sides of this coin. Now, if you look at it, if India wants to ensure uninterrupted energy supplies at affordable prices, how can it do so? So you may notice certain things that India, though the energy demand is going up, that is certain, energy demand is going up. right? एक simple example है, everyone would notice, certainly I noticed, from the time that I was growing up to this time, the number of vehicles on the road has increased many fold. When I look around my home, I find that, you know, not a lot of people used to have vehicles when I was growing up. Now every household has a vehicle, a four-wheeler, and some of them have more than one, two. जैसे ही हम थोड़ा सा अमीर होते हैं, हमारे ज़रूरत और हमारे मतलब जो कंजम्पशन है उसका जो एक रिप्रेजेंटेटिव होता है, क्या होता है? कोई भी व्हीकल खरीदना, right? Whosoever can afford whatever, from cycle to they will go to two-wheeler, from two-wheeler they would like to go to a car. Nothing wrong with this aspiration. The only thing is that these aspirations cannot be met without a substantial cost to be paid, be that as may. So what do we know about India? We know that India is world's third largest energy consumer. All right, when it comes to different sources of energy consumption, India is world's third largest energy consumer. We generally say US is world's largest energy consumer, China is second largest energy consumer, India is third largest energy consumer. Now, when we project it into the future, do we see this pattern coming down? Is India's energy demand going to come down? That is not going to happen. India's energy demand is not going to come down. All right, abhi ek census ho jane do. We will get to know whether we are 1.4 or 1.5 billion. All right, and certainly within a decade we will cross China in terms of population. All right, so one thing is for sure, that energy demand is not going to come down. So that means that India is a large consumer in today's economy, global economy, and in the foreseeable future, in the decade to come, 30 to 40% of global demand would be driven by India. All right, India would be the largest factor in driving global demand on energy. So that is also a given. All right, now let's look at how India would meet this demand. Right, India's absolute demand would be growing up, and as a proportion to global demand for energy, that would also be a major driver for global demands. So how would India meet this demand? Unless there is some chamatkar that we discover oil wells, for example, right? Or suddenly we have discoveries of large scale gas reserves, right? KG basin or any other basin. We know for sure that India would remain a net importer, right? Because India currently also is a net importer of energy resources. All right. And if we look at different categories of energy resources that India uses, right, we would be self-sufficient in biomass, right? But biomass is polluting. है ना, हमारे पास लकड़ी जलाना या ये काउ डंग का यूज करना, we may have self-sufficiency in that, but that is not a efficient source of energy. B, that is not a clean source of energy. So this, we use coal. Again, coal is not a clean source of energy. There would be global pressure to cut down on oil coal production. But with coal also there is a difficulty, right? With coal we have to think कि नया coal mine खोदें, माइन करें या फिर जंगल को बचाएं. जैसे छत्तीसगढ़ में there is a issue going on called the Hasdev Arand issue. All right, it is about a coal block. So the commercial interest is that expand that coal block, but the local people are saying that these are thousands of years old forests. ये जंगल हजारों साल पुराने हैं, इनको काटना नहीं चाहिए कोयला निकालने के लिए. So even if we have coal resources, we have difficulty of extracting them. All right, but even then we are not self-sufficient. So we even import coal from countries like Indonesia, Australia. We import coal. So वहाँ पे भी import है. But the largest major source of energy that we have is hydrocarbons. So again, hydrocarbons, if we see, 80% of India's demand is met by imports. All right. So even 80% of India's demand is met by imports. So all this tells you about India's energy security numbers. That is what you have to do when you want to write an answer. कि पहले establish करो, what do you mean by energy security? Where do you place India in this? And then comes West Asia. So out of this 80% of India's imports, जो हमारे need imports meet होती है, out of this close to 80% again comes from West Asia. All right, out of our 80% imports, close to 80% itself is from West Asia. West Asia is geographically closer. So that's why you will see among our top oil suppliers, who are among our top oil suppliers, we have depending on year to year, Iraq, all right, Iraq, Saudi Arabia, number one, number two, either number one, number two. This year, by the end of this year, it would be Russia, but generally it has been West Asian economies. Before 2018, even Iran was our second largest supplier. Iran, we stopped buying oil from Iran in 2018. All right. But be that as it may, this scenario would continue. Right. This scenario would continue. So West Asian countries would continue to play an important role when it comes to India's energy security. This dependence is not going to go away. Right. And then from buyer seller, the next way in which you can ensure energy security is when you have control of the assets, right? So we have companies like ONGC, right? Oil and Natural Gas Corporation. ONGC has its external arm called ONGC Videsh Limited. Other Indian companies also, GAIL, etc. They also focus on identifying newer areas of production and to the extent possible buying stakes. So हमारी companies हमेशा इस तलाश में रहती है कहाँ पे हमको नया रिसोर्स मिलेगा. सो कैन वी बाई स्टेक्स, राइट, रादर देन सिंपली बाइंग ऑयल, कैन वी हैव शेयर इन प्रोडक्शन. सो इन दैट कॉन्टेक्स्ट ऑल्सो either India has developed in this direction to the extent that Indian companies have bought stakes in the oil fields of Abu Dhabi, UAE, or we are interested in acquiring stake in Iran, South Pars field or Farzad B gas field. So we would like to buy stakes in this region. All right. Third idea is to ensure energy security. Suppose there is a time when import of energy for some reasons is stalled. So then we need to have reserves to meet the demand in the context of disruption in energy supply. अगर ऐसा कभी समय आया तो इस आइडिया को कहते हैं स्ट्रेटेजिक रिजर्व्स. ऑलराइट, दैट इंडिया नीड्स टू और कंट्रीज नीड टू बिल्ड स्ट्रेटेजिक रिजर्व्स. सो करेंटली वी हैव स्ट्रेटेजिक रिजर्व्स व्हिच आर स्टोरिंग ऑयल फ्रॉम वेस्ट एशिया. ऑलराइट, हैव यू हर्ड ऑफ इंडिया स्ट्रेटेजिक रिजर्व्स? कहाँ हैं? श्रीलंका में इंडिया का स्ट्रेटेजिक रिजर्व है. इंडिया का स्ट्रेटेजिक रिजर्व हाँ सुना है किसी ने? इंडिया हैज बिल्ट विशाखापट्टनम, ऑफ कोर्स ऑन द ईस्ट कोस्ट देयर इज विशाखापट्टनम स्ट्रेटेजिक ऑयल रिजर्व. मतलब जियोलॉजिकल फीचर्स को देखते हुए हमने जमीन के नीचे स्टोरेज किया है ऑयल का. ऑलराइट, कैवर्न्स हैं कहीं कहीं पे, जियोलॉजिकल स्ट्रक्चर ये परमिट करता है. राइट. दूसरा फिर वेस्ट कोस्ट पे है हमारा, मैंगलोर में और पादूर में इन कर्नाटका. These are strategic reserves, storing oil mainly from West Asia. And then next, in what ways can we ensure energy security? By diversifying sources of supply. So we buy from Saudi Arabia, we buy from Qatar, we buy from Iraq, we buy from any country which is able to supply to us. That is what we say. So number of countries. Then the other way in which we can diversify the options is working on non-renewables. So we have areas like International Solar Alliance. So International Solar Alliance is one way in which we are expanding the idea of energy security. So we have partnership with countries like UAE, United Arab Emirates, in the context of Solar Alliance. Or in any other cases also, we have renewable energy agreement with UAE, that we will also develop our renewable energy cooperation. That's why it features prominently in I2U2 negotiations also. And then you have newer areas of cooperation. For example, अगर आप थोड़ा ध्यान दे रहे होंगे तो कुछ हफ्ते पहले आपने एक न्यूज़ पढ़ी होगी, you may have come across it or may have not. So there you will find that Lebanon and Israel, with the help of the US, have signed an arrangement on maritime borders. All right. So why was this necessary? Because off the coast of Israel, in the Mediterranean, large reserves of gas have been found. All right, so Mediterranean can be a new area for energy production, and India has energy security cooperation or energy cooperation agreement with Israel also. So futuristically also we are looking at securing our interests. In that sense, what we can say is West Asia is important for us. Now when we look at this energy policy cooperation, few things become clear to us. That no matter what you do, imports are not going to be sustainable, right? So we need to do certain things in order to manage our energy interests when we are importing, and we also need to then find out ways to reduce dependence from imports. So what is it that India needs to do? First of all, India needs to bilaterally engage with West Asian countries in order to safeguard its interests, which means talks on, let's say, OPEC oil production, all right, or talks on a favorable arrangement for India, right? For example, it is argued that Asian countries pay a higher price to the crude oil from the Gulf. Why is this the case? So when we say that Asian countries pay a higher price to the Gulf oil, it is called Asian premium, all right, Asian premium. So in comparison to whom are we paying a larger price? So we generally say countries of Europe or North America, right? The price that they pay for West Asian oil is lower as compared to what Asian countries pay, right? Asian premium. But it is also called North Atlantic rebate, right? And it is dictated by various factors. For example, if you talk about Europe and North America, they have other sources of supply available to them. For Europe, Africa is there, right? Till recently, Russia was also there, right? United States has its own reserves, all right? United States has recently become net exporter of energy. It imports also, but it has become net exporter. So एक तो उनके पास, geographically speaking, they have multiple options available. So that's why in comparison in price negotiations, they have an advantage. Second of all, countries like United States in some ways are part of security of West Asia, all right? They are in alliance with countries like Saudi Arabia, right? So that also goes into a strategic consideration of price when it comes to the North American economies or the European economies. So Europeans pay lesser for the same oil, Asian pay higher. This is called the Asian premium. So India would have to address this issue of Asian premium, or at least India needs to ensure favorable and sustainable prices. ऐसा नहीं हो सकता कि भाई the oil prices continuously move in an upward direction. जैसे this year we have seen many firsts. It was unimaginable to see petrol and diesel both trading above 100 rupees. All right, it's a psychological marker. So for example, as far as my memory serves me well, I remember petrol prices to be around 28 rupees. 28 रुपए से मुझे याद है 28 रुपए से चढ़ना शुरू हुआ. अब now it is around 100 rupees, right? So it's something that हम adjust कर लेते हैं, but it is making an effect. So negotiating favorable prices, that's going to be the aim of India. Second is diversifying sources of supplies, right? So if you depend on only one area of supply, so obviously the producer has an advantage in terms of prices, all right, or your dependency. So diversifying sources of supply. So that's why we say that we will buy from anyone if oil is available. So diversifying sources का मतलब होता है अलग अलग जगह से खरीदना. रशिया से we are buying from Russia, we are buying from United States, we are buying from Africa, we are buying from South America. As much as possible, diversify your sources of supply. And third, diversify the energy basket. Apart from diversifying sources of supply, diversify the energy basket का क्या मतलब होता है? Energy basket, all the sources of energy that we use. कहाँ से हमारा energy आ रहा है? So coal, biomass, hydrocarbons, renewables, these are all part of the energy basket. So we need to diversify energy basket. So for example, India aims to produce 450 gigawatt of energy from renewable sources, right? We have already added 100 gigawatt of capacity, right? So that is another way in which we can ensure our energy security. But when we are looking at development of renewable energy sources, it's a costly exercise. It's a costly transition. You have to plan from research and development to equipment to the large logistics and infrastructure which would be required. So all this requires money. So in that context also, our partnership with West Asia may be used to attract investments in the renewable sector, right? So in these ways we can talk about energy security cooperation between India and West Asia, right? So that is the question that UPSC had asked in 2017, India's energy security cooperation with West Asia. In that kind of an answer, what did we do? जितना हमने discuss किया, क्या किया हमने? We first of all tried to use a definition. Second, we brought in some numbers on energy security to present India as a net importer. Third, when India is presented as a net importer, we presented West Asia as an important source from which we import. And in West Asia, we gave example of oil, we gave example of gas, we gave example of different countries. We also gave example of strategic reserves, buying stakes, different kinds of activities. And we also gave example of how renewable energy cooperation is also on the cards. So the idea is, first of all, bind your answer in such a way that it has these important elements, some definition, some context, some facts. And the second idea is diversify your answer, right? By using different examples. That is what we did when we tried to answer this question. Dehyphenation policy, I will explain again when we come to Israel. That is the question online. But let's write this down. All right, let's write this down, this answer to this question. Right, according to the IEA, International Energy Agency, according to the IEA, energy security refers to uninterrupted availability of energy resources. Energy security refers to uninterrupted availability of energy resources at affordable prices. At affordable prices. In this context, India as a large consumer, and West Asian countries as large producers, need to cooperate. India is world's third largest energy consumer today. India is world's third largest energy consumer today. And in the coming decade, India would be adding around 40%. India would be adding around 40% to global energy demands. India would be adding around 40% to global energy demands. Given that India remains a net importer of energy, given that India remains a net importer of energy with more than 80%, with more than 80% import dependence, with more than 80% import dependence in the case of hydrocarbons. Comma, West Asian countries are going to be a significant part of these imports, significant part or significant source of these imports. In the case of oil, while India's imports from the GCC countries, in the case of oil, while India's imports from the GCC countries stood at around 66%, in 2001, stood at around 66%. 66% in 2001. It is 65%. It is 65% in the current scenario. Over the years, countries like Iraq, Saudi Arabia, Iran and UAE, Iraq, Saudi Arabia, Iran and UAE have been among the largest suppliers for India, In the case of natural gas, Qatar alone is responsible for more than 40% of supplies, to India. This number in the past has been as high as 60%. This number in the past has been as high as 60%. In this case, this number in the past has been as high as 60%. In this case, India also is the third largest buyer. In this case, India also is the third largest buyer of natural gas from Qatar. in recent times, moving away from the simple buyer seller equation, in recent times moving away from the simple buyer seller equation, the cooperation has seen progress in upstream activities. All right, oil and gas sector is divided into three streams. Upstream is exploration and production, midstream is transport, and downstream is distribution. All right, so upstream activities, for example, Indian companies have bought 10% stake. For example, Indian companies have bought 10% stake in the offshore blocks of Abu Dhabi. India also has been working on the creation of strategic oil reserves. India also has been working on the creation of strategic oil reserves. 3 of them are already operational at. 3 of them are already operational at Visakhapatnam, Mangalore, and Padur. Visakhapatnam, Mangalore, and Padur. 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 Right? Both of them are in Karnataka. These facilities have also used West Asian oil. Going further, India has signed renewable energy cooperation agreements. India has signed renewable energy cooperation agreements with Saudi Arabia, and the UAE. Countries like the UAE are an important partner. At the International Solar Alliance. Furthermore, signing of energy cooperation agreement signing of energy cooperation agreement with Israel, signing of energy cooperation agreement with Israel in recent years, has expanded the scope for India's energy security cooperation, in West Asia, for India's energy security cooperation in West Asia. Going forward, India needs to use its engagements. India needs to use its engagements with the partner countries in West Asia, to address the concerns of price volatility, OPEC policies, and the Asian premium, given the constant threat of regional instability, India needs to focus on diversifying its sources of imports. India needs to focus on diversifying its sources of imports. Furthermore, diversifying energy baskets. Diversifying energy basket to focus on the renewables, or renewable sources would ease India's import dependence. All these efforts may be channeled through bilateral cooperation, forums like the I2U2, as well as the G20, in view of India's current presidency. In view of India's current presidency. All right, so we have written it. So in these issues would be discussed. ITU2 में भी discuss करेंगे, G20 में भी energy security हम discuss करेंगे. So that's basically an indication of how, if we are aware of current affairs, then we can use that in conclusion also. Right? This was an old question. कितने word लिखे होंगे इसके आंसर में हमने? ज़्यादा या कम? ज़्यादा ही है. So then what is your task? Go challenge yourself, write it in 150 words. जो आपको लिखना है वो हमने बता दिया. अब सेंटेंस तो आपको अपने अपने हिसाब से बनाना है, राइट? सो जो इस आंसर है उसकी आत्मा को बचा के उसका स्ट्रक्चर चेंज करके आप लिखें. दैट वुड बी योर चैलेंज. ऑल राइट, दैट इज व्हाट नीड्स टू बी डन. डाइवर्स एग्जाम्पल्स को, डेफिनेशंस को रखना है. जहां पे भी लगे कि ये चीज हटा सकते हैं तो ये प्रायोरिटाइजेशन होता है. व्हेन यू राइट आंसर यू ऑल्सो लर्न प्रायोरिटाइजेशन. क्योंकि पहली डिफिकल्टी हमेशा आंसर लिखने में आती है, जिसमें आता है उसमें ऐसा लगता है कि सब लिख दूं. ऑल राइट, आई शुड बी राइटिंग एवरीथिंग. वो पॉसिबल नहीं है. आपको जितना भी आता है वो आप सब कभी नहीं लिख सकते. ऑल राइट, तो ये जानना हमेशा जरूरी है, समझना हमेशा जरूरी है, इसलिए प्रैक्टिस जरूरी है. और कभी कभी ऐसा लगता है कि बहुत कम आता है तो अब मैं ज्यादा कैसे लिखूं. तो वहां भी ये समझने की जरूरत है कि 250 वर्ड लिखा हुआ है, इसका मतलब ये नहीं कि 250 वर्ड में ही लिखना है. 200 भी आता है तो उसको ढंग से लिखो, 150 भी आता है तो उसको ढंग से लिखो. राइट, देर आर सर्टेन इंपॉर्टेंट थिंग्स दैट यू नीड टू कीप इन माइंड. एग्जाम्पल्स होने चाहिए, फैक्ट्स होने चाहिए. जहां डेफिनेशन और डेफिनेशन, 2-4 नाम, एग्रीमेंट आ जाए, अच्छा है. राइट, दिस इज हाउ वी डू इट. सो हियर इज अ ब्रेक. प्लीज टेक अ ब्रेक. एंड आफ्टर द ब्रेक what we do is we look at areas like people now in the context of GCC. People, workers. Okay, should we continue beyond the break? Right. So here, keeping in mind West Asia, वो दरवाजा बंद कर दिए पीछे. Keeping in mind India's relations in West Asia, focusing on the GCC, we have the other aspect of people to people ties. All right. So then when we are talking about people to people ties, what do we mean by this? So again, there can be various meanings of it, but primarily we focus on the largest part of the flow of people, that is Indian workers in West Asia. Second, we focus on continuous aspect of movement of people. For example, Indians traveling to West Asia or pilgrimage like Hajj. So we can say that a people to people ties form an important pillar of engagements with the West Asian countries, and mainly, particularly, we are talking about the GCC countries, because this is where the concentration of Indians is. Right? So different numbers have pointed to different figures, 9 to 11 millions. So 9 million people of Indian origin or Indian expatriates work in West Asia. Here again we are saying mainly in the GCC countries. In these countries you have more than 9 million people of India working. Now in all these countries, the fact is that Indians are the largest expatriate group. Indians are the largest expatriate group, meaning there are other workers, other nationalities also in West Asia. People from Sri Lanka, people from Pakistan, Nepal, Philippines. But Indians are largest foreign workers in West Asian countries. All right, in each of these countries, Saudi Arabia, Indians are the largest group of workers. UAE, Indians are the largest group of workers. Qatar, Kuwait, you have the same scenario, right? So Indians are largest expatriates, right? And generally, if you would see, this is an important source of remittances. 50% of remittances sent to India are from West Asia. All right, 60% of remittance, 50% of remittance कहाँ से आ रहा है? आधा जो पैसा भेजते हैं हमारे लोग बाहर से, आधा भेजते हैं गल्फ कोऑपरेशन काउंसिल देशों में रहने वाले लोग. Right, so India received around 87 billion US dollars of remittance. 50% of it comes from, more than 40 billion US dollars comes from countries of West Asia. So it has economic significance also, right? And then if you see, we also find that other forms of engagements are also part of the people to people ties. So 200,000 Indians are permitted to undertake the Hajj pilgrimage every year. हर साल 2 लाख. मतलब सऊदी अरेबिया में हज होता है, तो सऊदी अरेबिया इशूज कोटा to each countries. India's quota is 200,000. 2 लाख लोग भारत से हज करने हर साल जाने के लिए एंटाइटल्ड है. इतने लोग जाते हैं, right? So that is also a large moving population. Then 50% of Indians traveling abroad, लगभग 50% भारतीय जो बाहर यात्रा कर रहे हैं, मान लो अफ्रीका जा रहे हैं, यूरोप जा रहे हैं, नॉर्थ अमेरिका जा रहे हैं, so they pass through the West Asian airports. All right, most importantly, they transit through countries like UAE, right? 50% Indians, if they are moving abroad, they are stopping, making a stop at UAE, फिर वहां से आगे की फ्लाइट लेते हैं. So this is also an important example of how people to people ties are important, right? UAE has become an important hub for transit for Indians traveling abroad, right? So this is another aspect. Now when we look at the issues surrounding people, we generally focus on the fact that 70% of Indian workers, 70% of these workers, Indian workers, are blue collar workers. All right, 70% जो हमारा पॉपुलेशन है वहां पे वो क्या है? ब्लू कॉलर वर्कर, सेमी स्किल्ड अनस्किल्ड लेबर. ऑल राइट, सेमी स्किल्ड अनस्किल्ड वर्कर, इनको कहते हैं हम ब्लू कॉलर. ऑल राइट, और 30% के आसपास क्या है? 30% इज स्किल्ड white collar professional and also entrepreneurs. All right, so rest of the 30% is the workers, are the workers who are white collar workers or skilled workers, or they are professionals like doctors, right, engineers, consultants, or they are also entrepreneurs. For example, अभी कुछ समय पहले लुलु मॉल खुला. कहाँ खुला? लखनऊ में, right? So Lulu Mall, the chain of this retail mall, started with UAE, right? वहाँ से शुरू हुआ, हमारे लोगों ने वहां बिजनेस भी खोला है. सो दैट इज व्हाट वी सी इज द केस. नाउ द प्रोमिनेंट इश्यूज faced by the workers, मतलब कौन से वर्कर्स? सो जनरली ब्लू कॉलर वर्कर्स, दे आर मोर वल्नरेबल, राइट, टू एक्सप्लोटेशन. सो गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया, जब पार्लियामेंट सवाल पूछा जाता है तो जवाब देती है कि दीज आर द प्रोमिनेंट इश्यूज फेस्ड बाय द इंडियन वर्कर्स. एक तो इशू है इन सम केसेस डिलेड और नॉन पेमेंट, delayed or non-payment of wages. या तो देर से तनख्वाह मिल रही है या फिर कुछ केसेस में नहीं मिली. तो ये हो गया एक सेट ऑफ प्रॉब्लम्स, राइट. दूसरा, नॉन फुलफिलमेंट ऑफ कॉन्ट्रैक्ट्स. नॉन फुलफिलमेंट ऑफ कॉन्ट्रैक्ट्स मतलब ऐसा बहुत बार होता है, राइट, मेनी प्लेसेस. ट्रैवल एजेंट्स और एम्प्लॉयमेंट एजेंट्स वुड प्रॉमिस देम समथिंग एंड व्हेन दे गो देयर द सर्कमस्टांसेस आर डिफरेंट. बोला कुछ, हुआ कुछ, राइट. इट स्टार्ट्स फ्रॉम हियर ऑल्सो. बहुत सारे लोग एजेंट के रूप में काम करते हैं, इमिग्रेशन एजेंट के रूप में काम करते हैं, राइट. So then they are the intermediaries between the employers and those who are being employed from India. So sometimes the workers are presented, given a different picture. When they go there, they find there is a different picture present. कभी working conditions ठीक नहीं है. So non-fulfillment of contracts. ये दूसरे नंबर पे शिकायतें आती हैं कि ऐसा होता है. तीसरा हम कह सकते हैं exit visa issues. All right, for example, under the kafala system, passports of workers are kept by the employers. वहां गया worker, their passports are then submitted, रख लिया. अब now when they have to come out, how do they come out of that country, travel back to India, right? So exit visa issues. In some circumstances, if you have come from for employment purposes, your stay, your visit depends on the terms of the contract. So कई बार कई केसेस में आपको एग्जिट वीजा के लिए इश्यूज फेस करने होते हैं, है ना. किसी भी वीजा में होता है कि भाई मल्टीपल एंट्री वीजा है, सिंगल एंट्री वीजा है, कितनी बार आ जा सकते हो, इस तरह की बातें. तो आने में भी कई बार वर्कर्स को मुश्किल का सामना करना पड़ता है, राइट. एंड देन यू हैव फाइलिंग ऑफ फॉल्स पुलिस कंप्लेंट्स. इसके अलावा इन सम केसेस फिजिकल violence. So there are lots of malpractices that have come to the fore, right? So sometimes workers are beaten, specifically the domestic category workers जो घर पे काम कर रहे हैं, घर पे काम करने को जाते हैं. So the reports have come that they are beaten, violence happens against them. कई बार ये भी रिपोर्ट आया कि भाई वहाँ बहुत सारे लोग जो है स्लेवरी का काम चला रहे हैं, यहाँ से इंडियन वर्कर्स को एम्प्लॉय किया और ऑनलाइन कारोबार चला रहे हैं उनको बेचने का. ऑल राइट. सो दीज ऑल आर देयर. प्लस अगर वर्कर कंप्लेन करता है तो उसके खिलाफ फॉल्स पुलिस केस लॉन्च कर दिया जाता है. तो इससे बहुत सारे लोग जेल में भी हैं. लॉज आर वेरी स्ट्रिंजेंट इन गल्फ कंट्रीज. सो if you are an immigrant, you are vulnerable to these kinds of possibilities, right? So these are the wide categories of complaints that generally Government of India reports are concerned with people of India in this region. So what are the steps which have been taken to address these? What can India do? So first of all, well, in any सिनेरियो व्हेन पीपल आर मूविंग अब्रॉड दे आर वल्नरेबल कैटेगरी. आप अपने घर में शेर होते हैं, घर के बाहर हर कोई किसी न किसी हिसाब से कमजोर होता है. देयर इज वल्नरेबिलिटी व्हेन यू आर मूविंग अब्रॉड. सो इस केस में हमको ये देखने को मिला. तो हम क्या कर सकते हैं? तो हम ये कर सकते हैं, और जो हम करते हैं, ए bilateral engagements have focused on improving the conditions of workers. तो भारत सरकार ये प्रयास करती है कि जब बातचीत हो किसी और गवर्नमेंट के साथ, so then we also raise up this issue that what can be done on this. So then we have signed multiple labor welfare agreements with multiple countries. सऊदी अरेबिया के साथ, यूएई के साथ, ऑलमोस्ट हर देश के साथ इस रीजन में हमारा एक लेबर वेलफेयर एग्रीमेंट है, गवर्निंग इन सम केसेस जनरल वर्कर्स, इन सम केसेस डोमेस्टिक वर्कर्स, in some cases the contractual conditions of employment. So we cover all these things as part of our understanding in what we call labor welfare agreements, right? So bilaterally ये हमने किया है. दूसरा, at the level of government of India we have facilities like Indian Community Welfare Fund, all right? Indian Community Welfare Fund. These funds are available to all the missions and posts. हमारे जो भी मिशन और पोस्ट अब्रॉड हैं उनके पास थोड़ा पैसा होता है. किस लिए? वेल, इन केस द इंडियंस आर फेसिंग एनी प्रॉब्लम दे कैन बी मॉनिटरली असिस्टेड. अगर आपको कोई प्रॉब्लम हो, सो गो वॉक इन टू योर एम्बेसी और कॉन्सुलेट and ask for help. So Indian Community Welfare Fund has been established in missions and posts, right? And then workers helplines, multilingual call lines, and workers resource centers. So these facilities have also been put in place. Workers helpline, कॉल कर लो भाई कोई प्रॉब्लम हो तो, राइट? जैसे हर किसी का एक सर्विस सेंटर होता है, कॉल सेंटर होता है, राइट? मल्टीलिंगुअल कॉल लाइंस मतलब मल्टीपल लैंग्वेजेस में पीपल मिग्रेटिंग टू वेस्ट एशिया come from different parts of India, right? Kerala, Tamil Nadu, Uttar Pradesh, हर इलाके से लोग जा रहे हैं. So multilingual call lines and workers resource centers, walk-in facility. भाई worker resource center है, आप वहाँ जाएं और जो भी आपके रिप्रेजेंटेटिव हो उनको अपनी प्रॉब्लम बताएं. So these have also been put in place, these mechanisms to ensure the welfare of workers, right? In the case of West Asian countries. And then we have schemes like e-migrate, right? Or e-enrollment of workers, or the minimum wages referral system, right? So all these are initiatives, digital initiatives to ensure availability of data numbers of Indians who are moving abroad, e-migrate, right? So at these facilities, workers who are employing or employers who are employing Indian workers need to register, right? Need to present numbers, right? Minimum wage referral system, meaning through these mechanisms we want to ensure that at least minimum wage standards are available for Indians abroad. So these are all initiatives on our part. This is what we can do. This is what we are doing. And then we have schemes for skilling. Pravasi Kaushal Vikas Yojana. Pravasi Kaushal Vikas Yojana. Right? Pravasi immigrant. So then we have also focused on skilling of our workers. All right, upgradation of their skills would enable them to have better opportunities abroad. So Pravasi Kaushal Vikas Yojana is another way in which we are trying to address the issues of workers. And we also then see that this is not enough. So what is required is, the need is to have a proactive response in the changing scenario. All right, in the changing scenario, what should happen? Proactive response. On whose part? On the part of the union government. That Indian government needs to take stock of the situation. Things may be changing. तो इससे पहले कि दुष्प्रभाव सामने आए, हम पहले प्लानिंग कर लें कि क्या क्या हो सकता है. Right? And then what is also required is, in this context, partnership between union government and state governments, right? So ultimately, the migrants move away from their homes, which are in states. They come back to their home, which are in states, right? So the linkage between the migrant and the family back home, or in the eventuality when the worker has to come back, because चलो मान लो कोई वॉर हो गया, कोई पॉलिसी चेंज हो गई वहाँ की गवर्नमेंट्स की, तो वर्कर जब आएंगे तो कहाँ आएंगे? दे वुड कम बैक टू देयर होम्स. So state governments have to be involved in the management of immigrants. There has to be a cooperation between union government and the state governments in the management of immigrant workers. Right? Proactive response किसके पार्ट पे हो सकता है? यूनियन गवर्नमेंट के पास पे, क्योंकि यूनियन गवर्नमेंट के पास सूचना है, यूनियन गवर्नमेंट के पास रिसोर्सेस हैं, यूनियन गवर्नमेंट हैज more of an external exposure. So union government needs to think about the future of immigration, what is possible, what may happen. And then in terms of rehabilitation of workers or addressing the issues of workers and their families, there has to be cooperation between the union government and the state governments. All right. So this is how we can manage the issue of workers. Right. Moving on. So this is people to people ties, the different aspects. और उसमें से एक प्रॉब्लम हमने निकाला. वो क्या प्रॉब्लम था? प्रॉब्लम्स ऑफ द वर्कर्स. राइट. सो वुड यू बी एबल टू आंसर अ क्वेश्चन on people to people ties as part of India West Asia relations? All right, the issues, challenges and steps which have been taken and steps which are required to be taken. तो जैसे एनर्जी सिक्योरिटी एक ब्रॉड एरिया है, वैसे ही ये वर्कर्स पीपल टू पीपल रिलेशंस इज अ ब्रॉड एरिया. अगेन गिव डाइवर्स नंबर्स एंड कम टू द क्रक्स कोर पॉइंट. व्हाट आर द इश्यूज दैट इंडिया नीड्स टू एड्रेस? किसी का कुछ छूटा तो नहीं? हाँ, सेकेंड पॉइंट छूट गया तो कर क्या रहे थे? कौन सा सेकेंड पॉइंट? इसमें तो कोई सेकेंड मैंने लिखा भी नहीं है. कौन सा सेकेंड पॉइंट है? कुछ तो हाँ, स्टेप्स विच हैव बीन टेकन. क्या स्टेप्स लिया है भाई हमने? तो ये नीचे की तरफ ही होना चाहिए, स्टेप्स टेकन. कौन सा सेकेंड पॉइंट छूट गया था? हो गया ना? नहीं हुआ? पॉइंट उनका छूटा था, यहां से इन्होंने इंडियन कम्युनिटी वेलफेयर फंड बताया. किसी और का कुछ तो छूट नहीं गया. यूपीएससी के एग्जाम में लोगों को चिंता सबसे ज्यादा होती है कुछ छूट गया तो। देखो लाइफ में भी कुछ छूटेगा। यू कांट स्टडी इन द सेम स्कूल, कांट हैव सेम सेट ऑफ फ्रेंड्स। जो बचपन में दोस्त है वो आज नहीं है, जो आज दोस्त है वो कल नहीं रहेंगे। तो लाइफ में भी चीजें छूटेंगी, एग्जाम में भी चीजें छूटेंगी। दिस एग्जाम इज नॉट अबाउट परफेक्शन, ऑल राइट, दिस एग्जाम इज अबाउट डुएबिलिटी। जो कर सकते हो वो आज कर लो। कल को जो परफेक्ट सॉल्यूशन, जो हमेशा हम सोचते हैं कि परफेक्ट होगा तो हम करेंगे परफेक्ट, परफेक्ट जैसा कोई नहीं, कोई चीज नहीं है इस एग्जाम में। चलिए आगे चलते हैं। लेट्स टॉक अबाउट इश्यूज ऑफ रीजनल और लेट्स टॉक अबाउट इकोनॉमिक एंगेजमेंट्स। क्या इंटरेस्ट है, इकोनॉमिक इंटरेस्ट है इंडिया के वेस्ट एशिया के अंदर। सो अगेन लार्जली रिमेंबर वी आर स्टिल टॉकिंग अबाउट जीसीसी, क्योंकि फिर कमर्शियल इंटरेस्ट ऑफ इंडिया आर ऑल्सो मेजरली कॉन्सेंट्रेटेड इन इंडियाज रिलेशंस विद द जीसीसी, गल्फ कोऑपरेशन काउंसिल, ऑल राइट। सो अगर हम देखें इस इकोनॉमिक एंगेजमेंट को, सो फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल these countries are important trading partners. Countries of the GCC are important trading partners for India. GCC as a bloc is an important trading partner for India. For example, if you see, this is reflected in numbers. 2013, GCC was the largest trading partner of India with around 171 billion US dollars of trade. Right? So 2013, some years, the numbers clearly illustrate the significance, economic significance of GCC. 2013, we have GCC as India's largest trading partner with 171 billion US dollars of trade. Right? We generally can say that trade has remained close to 100 billion US dollars with the GCC. With the GCC, our trade has been around 100 billion US dollars, right? Meaning, when I'm saying 100 billion US dollars, in this case, I'm saying in the range of 80 to 100 billion US dollars. Some years, more than 100 billion US dollars. So again, in terms of trade volume, this is an important trading partner, right? For example, 87 billion US dollars of trade in 2021, all right? अब इस साल का नंबर देखना, इस साल का नंबर शर्तिया 100 बिलियन US डॉलर से ज्यादा होगा। क्यों ज्यादा होगा? तो जब भी देखो 2013-14 जो समय है वो ऑयल प्राइसेस ज्यादा हुई थी उस समय, राइट? देयर वाज अ जंप इन ऑयल प्राइसेस। सो मेनली हमारा जो ट्रेड है वेस्ट एशिया के देशों के साथ, जीसीसी के देशों के साथ, वो उसमें बड़ा नंबर जो है ऑयल ट्रेड का है। सो इसीलिए जो नंबर का ऊपर नीचे होना होता है, दैट इज ऑल्सो अ रिफ्लेक्शन ऑफ ऑयल प्राइसेस, प्रिवेलिंग ऑयल प्राइसेस। सो दैट्स व्हाई वी कैन सेफली अज्यूम दिस ईयर द ट्रेड वुड बी मोर देन 100 बिलियन US डॉलर्स, राइट? वुड बी मोर देन, ज्यादा और भी ज्यादा जा सकता है। क्यों? क्योंकि इस साल देयर हैज बीन एन इंक्रीज इन ऑयल प्राइसेस। बट बी दैट एज इट मे, it is important to know that this is an important trading partner, right? So for example, cumulatively it is also an important export market for India. Even though the majority of trade is that of oil, but still India does not export oil to these countries. So we see that in terms of non-oil export, this is an important export destination for India. Here we can take the example of UAE. All right, for example, UAE. So UAE is always the third largest trade partner for India globally. Generally अगर हम country specific देखें, so it has always been US, always का मतलब in the last 10 years or so, all right? Mostly it has been US, China and UAE. These are top 3 trade partners for India. Fourth largest trading partner for India has been Saudi Arabia, right? So 2 of the Gulf economies are among India's largest trading partners. UAE at 3rd, Saudi Arabia at 4th, right? But it's also, UAE is also 2nd or 3rd largest, depending on the year. It is either 2nd largest or 3rd largest. इस scenario को हम कह सकते हैं, it has been among the top 3 of India's export markets. UAE, right? 3rd largest export market, right? And with UAE, we have significant non-oil trade also, right? Significant. So this number of this year is around 72 billion US dollars of trade this year. 72 billion US dollars of non-oil trade, right? Till 2018, India had a trade surplus with UAE. After 2019, UAE has a trade surplus. But still, this is one of the more balanced trade relations that we have, right? In terms of larger pattern. Similarly, India signed the CEPA with UAE in 2022. Last CEPA that India signed, right? Last CEPA that India signed was with Japan, all right? And the first new major trade agreement that India has signed is with UAE. So when we signed CEPA with Japan in 2011, that showed that Japan for us is an important economic trading partner, and we have signed CEPA with UAE. That shows that UAE is an important trading partner for us. So that is something that we see. This is the most comprehensive of existing trade agreements. ऑल राइट, इसके अंदर कुछ ऐसी बातें जो इसको स्पेशल बनाती हैं, राइट? फॉर एग्जाम्पल भी अगर आपने करंट अफेयर्स पढ़ा है तो इतना आपको ही पता होगा दैट by 2027, 5 years of this agreement, we aim to improve trade beyond 100 billion US dollars. All right, 100 billion US dollars. Similarly, we think that this free trade agreement would add to 1 million jobs directly. Sectors like pharmaceuticals and textiles would benefit directly, right? So that is something that we see is the case with UAE. Similarly, with GCC, Gulf Cooperation Council countries, we had initiated a trade negotiation with for a free trade agreement in 2003-4 trade negotiations with or for an FTA had been started. If you see the statement of Shri Piyush Goyal, Minister of Commerce, he has been saying that India may obtain a free trade agreement with GCC by 2022. Not possible. ना तो यूके के साथ हमारा ट्रेड एग्रीमेंट अभी पूरा जल्दी होने वाला है, ना तो जीसीसी के साथ, बट वी certainly see that in 2023, the year in which you will be writing the examination, most probably we will sign free trade agreement with GCC, we will sign a free trade agreement with Israel, we will sign a free trade agreement with UK, right? At least 2023 में. So these are prospective future agreements that we are looking at. Free trade agreement with GCC. Now when we look at the investments, the area of investments, so GCC countries are characterized by large sovereign wealth funds. All right, so sovereign wealth fund, for example, India has its own forex reserve, फॉरेक्स रिजर्व है हमारे पास, कितना है, कितना है, 500 बिलियन यूएस डॉलर के आसपास है, 532। चलो कोई बात नहीं, उसको 500 बिलियन कह सकते हैं, क्योंकि 532 531 भी हो सकता है ना, ये तो वॉलेटाइल नंबर है, बट फिर भी 500 बिलियन यूएस डॉलर्स है। चाइना के पास मोर देन $1 ट्रिलियन यूएस डॉलर्स है। सो दिस इज हाउ यू कैन अंडरस्टैंड सोवरेन वेल्थ फंड। मतलब वो जो पैसा है वो किसका है, वो किसका है, किसी एक कंपनी का नहीं है, वो किसका है, सरकार का पैसा है, राइट। सरकार के बिहाफ पे आरबीआई के पास है, आरबीआई मेंटेन कर रहा है फॉरेक्स रिजर्व। चलो उसी पैसे से गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया ने डिसाइड किया उसका इस्तेमाल कैसे करना है। उसका इस्तेमाल कैसे होता है, जैसे जब रूपी नीचे जाने लगा तो आरबीआई ने क्या किया, राइट, उसने या तो डॉलर खरीदता है या तो वो डॉलर बेचता है, ठीक है। तो ये हो गया एक सोवरेन फंक्शन। दूसरा हो गया, मान लो गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया ने डिसाइड किया कि हमारे पास जो फॉरेक्स है उसको हम एक फंड की तरह इस्तेमाल करेंगे, किस चीज के लिए, किसी भी चीज के लिए, लेट्स से डेवलपिंग कंट्रीज में इन्वेस्ट करने के लिए, लेट्स से इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर में इन्वेस्ट करने के लिए। सो सोवरेन वेल्थ फंड, राइट। So these are funds created by government surpluses, budgetary surpluses। मतलब आप जब आपके पास खर्च करने से ज्यादा पैसा हो तो आप उसको जमा करने लगते हैं। सरकार जब जमा कर रही है वो हो गया सोवरेन वेल्थ फंड। सरकार ने पेंशन का पैसा काटा, आपने पेंशन के लिए पैसा कटवाया, वो भी कहां चला गया, सरकार के पास, तो वो भी क्या हो गया, सोवरेन वेल्थ फंड। सो इसी तरह से दीज आर फंड्स क्रिएटेड बाय गवर्नमेंट surpluses, all right, either budgetary surpluses or sums owed to the government which are returned, right, or interest payment, or let's say auction of resources. All these can be sources of government's funds or exports. So this is something called sovereign wealth fund, funds created by government's surpluses. Now where are the largest sovereign wealth funds? तो दुनिया का सबसे बड़ा सोवरेन वेल्थ फंड है नॉर्वेजियन पेंशन फंड, ऑलराइट। नॉर्वेजियन सरकार, स्कैंडिनेवियन सरकारें बहुत ज्यादा टैक्स लगाती हैं और उसके बदले में एडिक्वेट पब्लिक वेलफेयर, पब्लिक सर्विसेज इंश्योर करती हैं, राइट। वेस्ट वाले लोग बहुत ज्यादा इन्वेस्ट करते हैं पेंशंस वगैरह में, राइट। सारे के सारे लगभग लोग इंश्योर्ड होते हैं, इसलिए वो ज्यादा कॉन्फिडेंट रहते हैं अपनी लाइफ में कि पेमेंट तो कहीं ना कहीं से आएगा। सो द नॉर्वेजियन पेंशन फंड इज द वर्ल्ड्स लार्जेस्ट सोवरेन वेल्थ फंड, नॉर्वेजियन सरकार के पास जो है। उसके बाद चाइना के पास है, उसके बाद फॉर एग्जांपल इन दिस एरिया यू हैव द कतार सोवरेन वेल्थ फंड और यू हैव द अबू धाबी नेशनल इन्वेस्टमेंट अथॉरिटी। तो जो भी कहें, इनके पास बहुत पैसा है। ये पैसा इनके पास कहां आता है, इनका सरप्लस कैसे क्रिएट होता है, बिकॉज दे आर मेजर ऑयल एक्सपोर्टर्स। और ऑयल एक्सपोर्ट कर रहे हैं तो क्या लग रहा है आपका, आपने तेल के कुएं खोदे, रिफाइनरी लगाई नहीं लगाई, चलो या तो कच्चा तेल या रिफाइंड तेल आप एक्सपोर्ट कर रहे हैं, पर आपका तो कुछ नहीं लगा, राइट। दिस इज कॉल्ड रेंटियर इकोनॉमी। रेंटियर इकोनॉमी व्हेन यू आर डिपेंडेंट ऑन रिसोर्सेस लाइक natural resources like oil for your revenue generation. So most of these are rentier economies which have benefited from the windfall generated by oil exports, है ना। सबसे फायदा किस बिजनेस में है, ऑयल के बिजनेस में। देयर आर थ्री थिंग्स विच आर पार्ट ऑफ जनरल इकोनॉमिक विजडम। सोना खरीदो, द वैल्यू ऑफ गोल्ड डजंट गो डाउन। सरकार भरे कोशिश करती रहे कि सोवरेन गोल्ड बॉन्ड खरीदो, लेकिन इंडियंस क्या खरीदेंगे, सोना, राइट। दैट मेटल हैज एन एल्योर, इंट्रिंसिक वैल्यू हो चाहे नहीं हो, लेकिन उस मेटल की वैल्यू है। दूसरा लोग क्या कहेंगे, रियल एस्टेट खरीदो, ऑलराइट, लैंड, उसकी वैल्यू ऊपर जाती रहती है। ये अलग बात है कि लंबे समय में बबल बनेगा और बबल टूटेगा भी। और तीसरा है ये ऑयल के प्राइसेस, ऑलराइट, ऑयल प्राइसेस, कमोडिटीज ट्रेड के अंदर ऑयल प्राइसेस, मिनरल्स के प्राइसेस। सो अगर डिकेडल ग्राफ प्लॉट करो, सो ऑयल प्राइसेस हैव ओनली शोन अपवर्ड ट्रेजेक्टरी, ऑलराइट। सो दिस इज समथिंग दैट is associated with these countries. Their major source of revenue has been foreign exchange, foreign currency, because of their oil trade. So India is interested in channelizing these sovereign wealth funds. पैसा कहां से आएगा? Remember we were talking about connectivity. Remember? Then we had said that investment requirement of countries is going up. for example in infrastructure. For example, let's say if India wants to become a $5 trillion economy by 2025, अब ये 2 साल में तो बहुत मुश्किल काम लग रहा है, लेकिन चलो कहते हैं कि 2025 तक इंडिया को $5 ट्रिलियन इकोनॉमी बन रहा है, इंडिया को कितना खर्च करना पड़ेगा? Around 1.4 trillion US dollars have to be spent by India on infrastructure for becoming a $5 trillion economy. Where would this money come from? हमारे पास इतना ज्यादा है नहीं पैसा, तो फॉरेन इन्वेस्टमेंट पर वो भी अलग अलग सोर्सेस से हमको चाहिए. सो वन ऑफ द मेजर सोर्सेस कैन बी सोवरन वेल्थ फंड. ये जो पैसा पड़ा हुआ है खजाने में, ये निकाल के लाना है हमको हमारे इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर में इन्वेस्टमेंट कराने के लिए. So India is interested in tapping these sovereign wealth funds for infrastructure. For example, इस केस में भी अगर हम देख लें 75 billion US dollars of investments committed by UAE. So UAE and India have signed an agreement whereby the UAE committed that it would be cumulatively investing 75 billion US dollars in India, right? So for example, the Abu Dhabi National Investment Authority, all right, Abu Dhabi is part of UAE. Its National Investment Authority became the first foreign institutional partner of NIIF, नेशनल इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर इन्वेस्टमेंट फंड. हमने जो नेशनल इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर इन्वेस्टमेंट फंड बनाया है, उसका पहला जो फॉरेन इंस्टीट्यूशनल पार्टनर था वो कौन था? अबू धाबी नेशनल इन्वेस्टमेंट अथॉरिटी, राइट? तो ये इस तरह के कामों को और आगे बढ़ाना है हमको. फिर और इन्वेस्टमेंट्स आ रहे, फॉर एग्जांपल इन दी वेस्ट कोस्ट रिफाइनरी प्रोजेक्ट और वेस्ट कोस्ट पेट्रोकेमिकल प्रोजेक्ट, राइट? सो इसके अंदर आएगा 22 बिलियन US dollars of investment. 50% of investment would come in partnership with Saudi Arabia and UAE. 11 बिलियन डॉलर UAE और सऊदी अरेबिया इन्वेस्ट करेंगे. ऑल राइट, दिस इज इन इटसेल्फ अ लार्ज प्रॉमिस ऑफ इन्वेस्टमेंट. एक बड़ा पेट्रोकेमिकल प्रोजेक्ट, पेट्रोकेमिकल रिफाइनरी project is coming up on the west coast, Maharashtra mein, right? People say in Ratnagiri or Raigad, right? Location has to be decided. So right, so generally कहते हैं Ratnagiri petrochemical complex that would be constructed with the help of the investment from Saudi Arabian companies and UAE. ये पैसा आएगा. दूसरा, अब बड़ी बड़ी कंपनियां हैं इस रीजन की, फॉर एग्जांपल अरब अमेरिकन कॉरपोरेशन अरामको, दुनिया की सबसे बड़ी कंपनीज में से एक है, बहुत पैसा है इसके पास. ये सऊदी अरेबिया की ऑयल कंपनी है, राइट? सो अरामको ने कहां इन्वेस्ट किया है? इन रिलायंस, ऑल राइट? सो देयर इंटरेस्ट इन द ऑयल एंड गैस सेक्टर और देयर इंटरेस्ट अदरवाइज. सो funds are being attracted, funds are coming from sovereign wealth fund, all right? उनको डिसाइड करना है उनको कहाँ इन्वेस्ट करना है. और इंडिया एक पोटेंशियल डेस्टिनेशन और हमको ज़रूरत है पैसे की. ज़रूरत का मतलब ये नहीं कि हम मतलब मांग रहे हैं, ज़रूरत का मतलब ये है कि हमको इन्वेस्टमेंट चाहिए, राइट? जैसे कोई भी बिजनेसमैन बैंक के पास लोन लेने जाता है, उसको पता है कि लोन लेकर के वो और पैसे कमा लेगा. तो वैसे ही इंडिया इज इन नीड एंड दीज कैन बी दी बैंकर्स दैट वी आर थिंकिंग ऑफ. सो ये फायदे हैं इनके साथ रिलेशंस के, इसलिए बहुत सेंसिटिविटी बढ़ती जाती है इनके साथ रिलेशंस में, राइट? सो इकोनॉमिक इंटरेस्ट अगर हम देखें तो ये है हमारा किसके साथ? GCC कंट्रीज के 7। अब भाई शरणवीर का कहना है, शरणवीर का क्या कहना है भाई, मैं समझ नहीं पा रहा हूँ। $154 in 21-22, व्हाट इज दिस शरणवीर? $151 in 21-22, $154 किस चीज का फिगर दिया भैया आपने? आर यू टॉकिंग अबाउट 154 बिलियन यूएस डॉलर्स ऑफ ट्रेड? चलिए जो भी है, सो यू अंडरस्टूड द इकोनॉमिक इंटरेस्ट ऑफ इंडिया एंड वेस्ट एशिया इन द कॉन्टेक्स्ट ऑफ GCC। ऑलराइट, जब भी चैट पे कोई काम की बात आती है तो दैट ऑल्सो आई ट्राई टू शेयर विथ यू, बट समटाइम्स दे आर रिटन इन 1 word और 2 word, तो मुझे भी समझ में नहीं आता क्या लिखा हुआ है, राइट? ओके, so what is the third or what is the next area of engagement that we would be looking at? So we generally are looking at security, defense and issues of regional stability. Security, defense and issues of regional stability. Okay, so Sharanvi का कहना है कि in 2021-22 India's trade with GCC, I am assuming GCC ही कहना है इनका, is 154 billion US dollars. Alright, साइड में कहीं लिख लीजिए 154 billion US dollars in 2021-22. Right, चलिए, so ये मैटर नहीं करता, यूपीएससी इन द प्री एग्जामिनेशन इज नॉट गोइंग टू आस्क कि ये कितना है कितना नहीं है, बट पैटर्न वाइज द अंडरस्टैंडिंग इज इंपॉर्टेंट. सो व्हेन वी से फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल द सिक्योरिटी एंड स्टेबिलिटी इन वेस्ट एशिया, इन द गल्फ कंट्रीज, व्हाई इज इट इंपॉर्टेंट फॉर इंडिया? एनीवन? क्यों इंपॉर्टेंट है कि ये Okay, so in order to safeguard India's energy interests, India's economic interests, and also the safety of Indians in West Asia, it is important that India keeps an eye on regional stability in this region. So our security and defense cooperation or interest in regional stability derives from interests, right? What kind of interests? India's energy interests, India's economic interests, and India's workers in the region. These are sufficient factors because of which we need to be aware of what is happening in this region. So that means that what are the risks associated with security and stability in this region? What are the risks? Anyone? The risks, क्या risk है regional stability और security को इस region में? We have talked about it. शुरुआत में हमने इसी बात से बात शुरू की थी. We have a regional rivalries. We have conflicts and civil war like situations. Right, so in the past you have had Arab-Israel war, series of Arab-Israel war, right? So that is regional rivalries, conflicts and civil war. किसी न किसी समय में कोई ना कोई conflict इस region में हो रहा होता है, right? And non-state actors like ISIS, their emergence. So these are major factors of regional instability traditionally or in the current times. What affects regional stability? Either differences between countries, their rivalries, Israel, Arab states, Iran, Arab states, Israel, Iran. इनके बीच का झगड़ा एक तो लार्जर कॉन्फ्लिक्ट का पार्ट है, ऑलराइट. दूसरा सिविल वॉर सिचुएशन, जब सिविल वॉर हो रही है कहीं पे यमन में, सीरिया में, तब भी हम देखेंगे कि डिफरेंट साइड्स आर अलाइंड विथ डिफरेंट फाइटिंग फैक्शंस, राइट. And then non-state actors like ISIS. And then you have the larger issue of maritime security. For example, Strait of Hormuz or Bab al-Mandeb Strait. ये सब यहां पे मौजूद है. तो अगर झगड़ा हो रहा है तो दिस कैन लीड टू क्लोजर ऑफ स्ट्रेट ऑफ हॉर्मुज, ये हमेशा एक खतरा बना रहता है, स्ट्रेट ऑफ हॉर्मुज बंद हो गया सो देयर वुड बी अ सिग्निफिकेंट डिसरप्शन इन ऑयल सप्लाईज, क्योंकि मेजॉरिटी ऑफ ऑयल प्रोडक्शन जो है वो पर्शियन गल्फ में हो रहा है। पर्शियन गल्फ से बाहर निकलने का एक ही रास्ता है, वो है स्ट्रेट ऑफ हॉर्मुज। तो ये एक हमेशा खतरा बना रहता है। और बाबल मानदेब स्ट्रेट ऑल्सो, बाबल मानदेब स्ट्रेट बिटवीन सोमालिया, between Djibouti, between Yemen, all conflict prone regions. So the effect of conflict can be on Bab el Mandeb Strait also, that would affect global trade. अब इसमें बहुत सारी ऐसी चीजें जिनके बारे में हम कुछ नहीं कर सकते। फॉर एग्जाम्पल वी कांट डू एनीथिंग अबाउट रीजनल राइवलरीज, वी कांट डू एनीथिंग अबाउट कॉन्फ्लिक्ट्स एंड सिविल वॉर, है ना। तो यहां पे हम बेसिकली वही करते हैं, हम क्या करते हैं, वी अडॉप्ट न्यूट्रलिटी, नॉन प्रिस्क्रिप्टिवनेस, नॉन इंटरफेरेंस, क्योंकि किसी के झगड़े में शामिल होकर हमारा कोई फायदा नहीं है, ऑलराइट, और ना हम बहुत ज्यादा कुछ कर सकते हैं वहां पे। तो ये ऐसी चीजें हैं जिनके बारे में हम केवल प्रिंसिपल्स के बारे में बात करते हैं, राइट। क्या प्रिंसिपल्स, तो जब भी कोई झगड़ा होगा इस रीजन में या दुनिया में किसी भी रीजन में, इंडिया क्या कहेगा, दो तीन बातें। यू आर द जनरेशन ऑफ रशिया यूक्रेन क्राइसिस, क्या हुआ, व्हाट डिड इंडिया से, कुछ तो सीख गया होंगे आप। इंडिया फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल वुड ऑलवेज कॉल फॉर सेसेशन ऑफ हॉस्टिलिटीज, सेसेशन ऑफ वायलेंस, right? First, violence should stop. Second, India would say that dialogue and diplomacy, regional efforts, जिसका झगड़ा है वो साथ में बैठ के सुलझाए। डायलॉग, डिप्लोमेसी एंड रीजनल एफर्ट्स, मतलब किसी बाहर वाले को जाने की जरूरत नहीं है। पहले तो रशिया यूक्रेन बात करें, रशिया यूक्रेन ज्यादा से ज्यादा यूरोप आ जाए, टर्की आ जाए, ये रीजन के लोग हैं, राइट। यहां पे भी जो भी रीजनल लोग हैं वो बात करें। सो रीजनल सॉल्यूशंस, डायलॉग, डिप्लोमेसी। Third, India would say that certain principles must be respected. What? Sovereignty and territorial integrity of countries. Fourth, what would India say? Humanitarian concerns, humanitarian assistance. लोगों के ऊपर जो युद्ध का प्रभाव पड़ता है, कॉन्फ्लिक्ट का प्रभाव पड़ता है, उस पर ध्यान देने की जरूरत है। ह्यूमैनिटेरियन असिस्टेंस, ह्यूमैनिटेरियन कॉन्फ्लिक्ट, राइट। यही इंडिया की पोजीशन होगी। और दूसरा क्या होगा इस तरह के केसेस में, तो दूसरा हम देखेंगे कि इन केसेस से हमारे इंटरेस्ट पे क्या प्रभाव पड़ रहा है। तो जो डायरेक्ट एक्शन हम वो करेंगे वो क्या होगा, मान लो इफ इंडियंस आर लोकेटेड इन दीज रीजन्स, व्हाट वुड वी डू, इवैक्यूएशन, नॉट ओनली एयरलिफ्ट बट इवैक्यूएशन बाय एनी मींस, राइट। दैट इज व्हाट वी हैव डन in the context of the Gulf War, first Gulf War, 1990-91. That is what we did. That is what most recently we did in the context of, let's say, Yemen. यमन में 2015 में intense phase of fighting broke out. So we conducted Operation Rahat. All right, Operation Rahat. We conducted Operation Rahat, right? And then strategic dialogues of India focuses on common issues like terrorism and radicalization. So ये कॉमन इश्यूज है जिस पे बात कर सकते हैं, कॉमन अप्रोच डेवलप कर सकते हैं। मतलब राइज ऑफ आइसिस अल्टीमेटली इज एन एग्जांपल ऑफ राइज ऑफ टेररिज्म, एंड रेडिकलाइजेशन इज अ वे ऑफ स्प्रेडिंग एक्सट्रीम आइडियाज विच मे लीड टू और विच मे सपोर्ट टेररिज्म। तो ये कॉमन कंसर्न है। सो आर स्ट्रेटेजिक डायलॉग्स फोकस ऑन द इशू ऑफ रेडिकलाइजेशन एंड टेररिज्म। यहां पे हम बात करते हैं मैरीटाइम सिक्योरिटी के मामले में। फॉर एग्जाम्पल 2020 ईरान एंड यूएस, ईरान सऊदी अरेबिया, ईरान गल्फ कंट्रीज, देयर रिलेशंस डेवलप टेंशंस। तो ईरान के अंदर कुछ ड्रोन अटैक हुए पेट्रोलियम रिफाइनरीज पे, पेट्रोलियम पाइपलाइंस पे, ऑलराइट। दूसरा, अमेरिका ने अपना ट्रूप प्रेजेंस बढ़ाया इस रीजन में। ईरान ने कहा कि हम भी एक्शन लेंगे, ऑलराइट, वी विल ऑल्सो एक्ट अगेंस्ट। अमेरिका वालों ने मार दिया जनरल कासिम सुलेमानी को इराक में मिसाइल डाल के। तो ईरान वालों ने कहा कि हम भी बदला लेंगे। तो जो भी बदला लेता रहे, जो भी जिसको मारता रहे, हमारा मेन कंसर्न ये है कि भाई यहां पे बहुत ज्यादा कॉन्सेंट्रेशन है ग्लोबल ट्रेड का। शिप्स आर मूविंग फॉर ट्रेड, शिप्स आर मूविंग फॉर एनर्जी सप्लाईज। इसका टेंशन से कोई लेना देना नहीं है। पर ईरान धमकी देता रहता है कि स्ट्रेट ऑफ हॉर्मुज बंद कर देंगे, या यूएस कोई एक्शन लेगा, सऊदी अरेबिया कोई एक्शन लेगा तो स्ट्रेट ऑफ हॉर्मुज बंद हो जाएगा। तो ऐसे सब सिचुएशन में कभी कभी हमको यहां पे जैसे हमने अपने 2 नेवल शिप्स भेजे इस रीजन को पेट्रोल करने के लिए अंडर ऑपरेशन संकल्प, ऑल राइट, इन 2020, राइट. सो पेट्रोल द रीजन, दैट्स इट. कुछ इन्फोर्स करने के लिए नहीं, पेट्रोल करने के लिए कि भाई अगर जरूरत पड़े तो मदद कर पाए किनकी, ऑफ द ट्रेडर्स ऑफ द शिप्स कैरिंग ऑयल. सो वी इंगेज इन ऑपरेशंस हियर, but we also then are increasing relations with these countries, right? So for example with Oman we have long standing strategic ties. उनके साथ बहुत पुराने समय से हमारे संबंध हैं ओमान के साथ, फ्रेंडली कंट्री है. So for example we have agreement for the use of, from Indian Ocean you will remember, the Dukm port. Indian Ocean से याद है आपको, right? So here we have arrangements, special arrangements with these kinds of countries, arrangement for the use of Dukm port, or we have exercises like Nasim al Bahr, which is basically an exercise dating back to 1993. तब से इनके साथ हमारी ये exercise है. So we have had some close security cooperations in the past, and then we are trying to improve on this. So with UAE we in 2021 started the exercise called Zayed Talwar, all right, the Zayed Talwar exercise we have started, or we also have started participating in region initiatives like Desert Flag. Desert Flag is hosted by UAE, a multi-country military exercise. So we have been participating in these kinds of exercises. Then we have also inaugurated naval exercise with Saudi Arabia. इनके साथ भी naval exercise हमने शुरू कर दिया है, right? So we have various measures of cooperation, keeping in mind number one, what is it that we keep in mind? That regional security and stability in West Asia is essential to safeguard India's economic interests, India's energy security interests, and also the safety and security of its people in West Asia. Secondly, some of the issues in West Asia have been long-standing and complex, where India adopts a position of neutrality, non-interference and non-prescriptiveness. ऑलराइट, सो ये एक और तरीका है. इस भाई हम जहां कहीं कुछ बना नहीं सकते वहां बिगाड़ने के लिए जाने की जरूरत नहीं. जैसे अमेरिका वाले हर जगह चले जाते हैं पर बनाते बहुत कम है. ऑलराइट, वो चले हर जगह जाते हैं, उनका हर जगह इंटरेस्ट है, लेकिन बहुत कम जगह पे वो ऐसा है कि बहुत कुछ क्रिएटिव करके आए हों. इराक गए, इराक को भी वैसे छोड़ दिया, आज इराक के अंदर भी इंस्टेबिलिटी है. अफगानिस्तान गए, अफगानिस्तान को वैसे छोड़ दिया, वहां पे इंस्टेबिलिटी है. तो उसकी बजाय हम हमेशा से ये करते हैं कि हम कहीं इन्वॉल्व नहीं होते, because we don't see how it would lead to any positive outcomes. So there we adopt neutrality, non-prescriptiveness and non-interference. But ऐसे कुछ एरियाज है जहां पे कोऑपरेशन हो सकता है. जैसा कोऑपरेशन कहां पे हो सकता है? जैसे कोऑपरेशन हो सकता है when we have for example a situation in civil war, we would always require the friendly relations with these countries. कोई ना कोई मदद करता है. जॉर्डन ने मदद की हमको इराक में, हमारे कुछ वर्कर्स किडनैप हुए थे, उनके बारे में जानकारी रखने में, है ना. उसके अलावा इवैक्यूएट जब भी कर रहे हैं हम इसमें से किसी भी रीजन से, तो हमको किसी न किसी की मदद चाहिए होगी, राइट. तो ऑपरेशन राहत जैसे हमने किया यमन में. दूसरा, देयर आर इश्यूज which are issues of common concern. If terrorism is emerging, then it is a threat to the local governments as much as it is a global threat. For example, हम कहते हैं रेडिकलाइजेशन कैसे फैलता है? थ्रू द यूज ऑफ आईसीटी, फेसबुक, व्हाट्सएप, इन सारी चीजों का इस्तेमाल हो रहा है. सो आइडियोलॉजीज हैव अ ग्रेटर एबिलिटी टू प्रोजेक्ट देमसेल्व्स. सो इंडिया के अंदर भी कई बार ऐसा केस आता है कि भाई किसी व्यक्ति ने का संपर्क हुआ इनसे एंड दे वर इंस्पायर्ड बाय दीज. तो हमारे यहाँ भी एफर्ट होता है कि डी रेडिकलाइजेशन करें, समझाएं लोगों को. उनके यहाँ भी ये एफर्ट है. सो कोऑपरेशन इन रेडिकलाइजेशन और कोऑपरेशन इन काउंटर टेररिज्म, विच मीन्स cooperation in against financing of terrorism, cooperation against spread of terrorist ideology, and also cooperation in intelligence sharing. इस तरह का cooperation हमारे relations का part है. उसके अलावा maritime security, a larger issue, an issue which is instrumental in the context of energy and trade. So there we develop friendly relations with many of these countries. For example, Oman is a traditional example with which we have a long-standing naval exercise, Nasim al-Bahar, but also a logistics arrangement whereby we can use the Dukm port for our naval ships. Then this kind of cooperation is the template which we try to expand. So with UAE we have a strategic relation now. So part of that strategic relation is a dialogue, but also part of that strategic relation is increased number of exercises, right, with UAE, right, either bilateral exercises or multilateral exercises. Similarly, we are increasing these kinds of exercises with Saudi Arabia as well, right? So कुछ चीजें हैं जो हम कर सकते हैं, कुछ चीजें हैं जो हम नहीं कर सकते. We need to be aware of what we are doing. So we will stop here. When we meet tomorrow, what we do is we wrap up West Asia. थोड़ा थोड़ा एक एक देश के बारे में देखेंगे, एंड देन वी मूव टू डायस्पोरा. फिर डायस्पोरा हम करेंगे. फॉर एग्जाम्पल यहां पे जो हमने वर्कर्स की बात की, दिस इज कॉल्ड द गल्फ डायस्पोरा. सो नाउ वी विल ब्रिंग टुगेदर डायस्पोरा एज वन. नेवल एक्सरसाइज विशाल कुमार विद सऊदी अरेबिया. शैलेंद्र का पूछना है, इट हैव बीन सीन दैट मेनी ऑफ गल्फ कंट्रीज ट्राई टू कंडेम टू इंडिया ऑन द इश्यू ऑफ रिलीजन, माइनॉरिटी एंड JNK. हाउ इंडिया शुड रिएक्ट? तो पहली चीज तो भाई ऐसा है, इंडिया शुड नॉट रिएक्ट, इंडिया शुड रिस्पॉन्ड. रिएक्ट एंड रिस्पॉन्ड दोनों में अंतर होता है. व्हेन यू रिएक्ट यू आर इन अ हरी, और रिएक्ट करने का काम किसका है? यूट्यूब का है, व्हाट्सएप पे फॉरवर्ड्स का है, आजकल टीवी चैनल वाले भी रिएक्ट करते हैं. Bilateral relations are not to be dictated by reactions. So what is India's choice? Well, first of all, we ignore most of the statements which are made. ये जो मैं देखता हूं सोशल मीडिया के अंदर ना, जो गुस्से का एक बिजनेस चल रहा होता है, गुस्सा फैलाने का, कि लोगों को इस बारे में बुरा लगता है और बुरा लगवाओ. ये बायलैटरल रिलेशन ऐसे नहीं चलते. बायलैटरल रिलेशन में हम चुप रहते हैं बहुत सारी बातों में, और जब वो बात उठाई जाती है, when the issue is raised bilaterally, we talk about it in diplomatic language with restraint. But we largely understand that rhetoric of a particular time may pass, right? Relations are long standing. So our focus is always interest based. हमारा interest क्या है? अगर हम हर किसी की कही हुई बात को रिएक्ट करने लगेंगे तो हमारा कोई रिलेशन नहीं होगा, क्योंकि हमेशा कोई ना कोई कुछ ना कुछ ऐसा कहेगा जो हमें अच्छा नहीं लगेगा. तो पहली चीज तो ग्रोइंग अ थिक स्किन, थोड़ी मोटी चमड़ी होनी चाहिए, राइट, टू टेक क्रिटिसिज्म्स इन स्ट्राइड. दूसरा, रिस्पॉन्डिंग टू एनीथिंग, एनी स्टेटमेंट एट द अप्रोप्रिएट प्लेटफॉर्म. जहां जो बात कर रहा है, जो बात जहां होनी चाहिए वहां हम बात करते हैं. तीसरा, हम हमेशा हाईलाइट करते हैं कि हमारे बीच बहुत कुछ कॉमन है. पर सोशल मीडिया पे क्या होगा? सोशल मीडिया पे ये होगा कि कतार को हम गरीब बना देंगे क्योंकि कतार को चावल हमसे चाहिए, अनाज हमसे चाहिए. सऊदी अरेबिया का हम ये कर देंगे क्योंकि ये और ये. तो ऐसे डिप्लोमेसी नहीं चलती, क्योंकि इतने सारे मैंने आपको नंबर्स दिए कि 100 बिलियन ज्यादा ट्रेड है, ऑयल इंपोर्ट में बड़ा रोल है इनका, हमारे लोग यहां जाते हैं, हम भी इनके लिए इंपॉर्टेंट है क्योंकि वी आर अ लार्ज इमर्जिंग इकोनॉमी, तो इनको भी यहाँ पे इन्वेस्ट करना है. तो अगर बातों के बेसिस पे, बिजनेस के लोग हैं ना, बिजनेस में जो लोग होते हैं वो बातों के बेसिस पे बिजनेस थोड़ी ना बनाते हैं. उनको आपकी शक्ल से कोई मतलब नहीं है, आप क्या कह रहे हैं उससे कोई मतलब नहीं है, मतलब है इंटरेस्ट का. तो वी डोंट रिएक्ट, वी रिस्पॉन्ड एट द अप्रोप्रिएट फोरम्स, राइट. एंड माई अपील वुड ऑल्सो बी, पब्लिक एंगर, पब्लिक सेंटिमेंट्स आर नॉट द बेस्ट गाइड फॉर फॉरेन रिलेशंस. ऑलराइट, सो डू व्हाटएवर यू डू इट रिस्पॉन्सिबली. ठीक है, चलिए.